Greetings, fellow game designers. My name is John, otherwise known as Megahertz. Today I'm going to implement animation to my 2D player controller using Bolt visual scripting and Unity. This is part 4 in my player controller series. If you want to follow along and have my finished player controller, which I showcased at the start of this series, you can certainly do that. Just click the first video in the series link in the description to go back to the start. If, on the other hand, you just want to know how to implement animation in your game using Bolt visual scripting and Unity, then let's get things moving. If you've been following along in the video series, then you know that we make macros at the beginning and we implement them later on. I'm not going to build them on screen because it makes my videos longer and less desirable to watch. So this is all new to you. I'll throw up some links to some easier project builds so you can easily accomplish building something by looking at a picture. But you're going to want to go ahead and build the movement animation macro on your screen. And go ahead and pause, and when you're ready to continue, then we'll implement this into this build. In the previous videos, we saw that we had two parameters that do not exist, grounded and sprinting, and so we're going to go ahead and create that now. So going to your player controller, we set up an animator already. Click on parameters, and we're going to actually add 3 parameters here. We're going to add, these are all bools. The first one is grounded. The second one is, it's also a bool. The second one is sprinting. And the last one is moving. So go ahead and set those up. The next thing we're going to work on is our animation substates. We're going to want to try to keep this clean and organized. And I have a finished product that I'm looking at. So this took me a little bit of time to figure out exactly how I wanted this. But basically what we're going to do is you're going to go to your animator window. And right here where it says idle, just right click and hit create substate machine. And right up at the top, you can rename this. We're going to name this regular mode. And then we're going to drag the idle inside of regular mode if it will let me. There we go. And inside of idle or in regular mode, we're going to create another substate, and we're going to call this one walk and run. And you guessed it, that's where we're going to put our walk and run animations, which we're going to need to go ahead and create that right now. In the first video in this series, I explained where to get these sprites from. You can go ahead and check out that first video or just check the link in the description. I'll throw a link in there again. Under player, you're going to want to add 2 new folders, name one walk, name one run, and then you're going to drag in your run sprites and your walk sprites in each one of these. Make sure you set the pixels to 25. If you have problems with this one, which I did, you know, I'm going to go ahead and throw this link in here. I should be okay just doing that. I'm not giving you everything that he has. Just for some reason, I had problems with that one, with the walk one. So we're going to go ahead and set both of these to 25. Make sure you hit apply on both of those, and then we're going to set up some animations. Just one more thing that we probably need to address. If you look at the run animations, you actually have 5 of those. But if you look at the walk animation, then you only have 1 file, and it's set to the right pixels per unit. But what we're going to do is we're going to set that to multiple, and then you're going to open up your sprite editor after applying, and you should have a window pop up that looks like that. On the page that we actually download this from, if you scroll down, you'll notice that he says the sprite dimensions are 50 by 37. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to slice this up 50 by 37. So go to grid by cell size, 50 by 37. It actually already sets the height for you. Go ahead and hit slice, and then as soon as you hit slice, go ahead and hit apply, and you should now have 5 different sprites. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our our player, and then we're going to go to animation, and we're going to add 2 new animations. Let's call one walk, and let's call one run. And so under run, just grab those 6 files and throw them in there, and they should be working correctly. Go ahead and set that to somewhere around 10. I think that's probably right. You might have to go to 12 just to kind of get a little bit faster animation. That's up to you. The higher the number, the faster the thing is going to move. And then going to click on walk. We're going to go back to our sprites player, walk, and then we're going to grab these and throw them in there as well. And that should be walking. Set that to 10, and we should see a little bit slower walk. Now you notice that it set the run and the walk into the sprites player walk folder. That's because I didn't tell it where to go. So I'm going to drag those into animation player and put those in the correct place. Next, going back to our animator, we are actually in the regular mode substate. So we're going to go back to base layer. You should see that walk and run have been put in there. So go ahead and drop both of those into regular mode. Then grab those both and put them inside of walk and run. Go back into that one and just kind of space them out a little bit. Going back up one layer, make a transition from idle to walk, and then idle to run. Going inside of this, we're going to say, let's drag this one right here, and we're going to make a transition from walk to run, transition from run to walk, transition from walk back to idle, and transition from run back to idle. States, regular mode, idle. Okay, going back to our regular mode, we're now going to have to set, and you notice when you're doing, it's moving away from idle towards walk and run. And up here at the top, we're gonna have to set our parameters so that it actually makes a transition. So let's start with run, click off exit time. We don't need it to have an exit time. Transition duration, 0. And right down here where it says conditions, we want it to be grounded, and this is important. We need to set this early so that whenever we're jumping in the air, it's not looking like it's running. So we're moving from from idle to run. So we need it to be grounded. We need it to be moving. And when that's true, when ground is true, moving is true, and when sprinting is true, then it will fire from idle to run. So let's go ahead and set up walk real quick. Same thing, has no exit times, transition to 0. List, we want grounded to be true. We want moving to be true. And this time we want sprinting to be false. We want it to move from idle to walk if sprinting is not true. So you should see both of those are set up, moving from regular mode, which is coming from idle. Now let's set our run, so from walk to run. So this arrow moving from walk to run. We want it to fire or change the animation when we're walking, when we press the shift button. So we need that to be grounded true. We need it to be moving true. We need it to be sprinting true. Almost the same thing going back from run to walk. We just need grounded to be true. We need moving to be true, but we need sprinting to be false. Okay, moving from run back to idle, which is this one right here. We are going to make sure that exit time is clicked off on all of these. If I hadn't said that before, we do need to go and make sure all of that is set to 0 with no exit time. We don't need this to have an exit time. There are certain animations, but these are not them. Okay, so from run back to the idle state, we need grounded to be true. We need moving to be false. And I think that will actually work. But just to be safe, let's go ahead and set sprinting to false. Okay, now we're going to go from walk back to our sprint. Walk back to idle. So we need grounded to be true. We need sprinting to be false, and moving to be false as well. Okay, one more thing to check is just making sure that none of these have an exit time, which I think I might have forgotten. Yep, forgot that one right there. Take the exit time, set the duration to 0, and let's check to make sure our run is the same way. Just check all of these, make sure the exit time is off on all of these. Okay, you should already have this movement animation macro set up. I showed you the picture earlier. Just double check and make sure that this is correct. Let me explain very quickly what this is doing. Basically, we have a constant updating flow coming in, checking our x-axis, and it's going to set that variable inside this graph for movement. And I think it is setting that for movement for a later value that we're going to do later on in a different build. So just go ahead and throw that in there. It's not going to hurt anything. But that's running into a sequence of 3 different branches. And that movement, which is our x-axis, if it is less than 0, meaning it's negative, then it's going to go right into here. that is going to check if it's true. Is it negative? Yes. Then it's going to come over here. Well, now it's checking, is it blocked left? In other words, we're facing left, we're running left. Is it blocked left? If it is blocked left, then it's going to turn our movement on our animator off. If it's not, then it's going to turn our moving on. Same thing for our blocked right, which is coming out of our A is greater than 0. So our movement is greater than 0 on the x-axis, and the same thing is happening here. It's also setting variables right down here. So it's not only setting our animator value, it's setting our variables, which this is going to come in even more in our wall jumping parameters and things. So as we get to the end here, what this is doing is this is saying, okay, now that we're moving, is our movement variable equal to 0, which is that long line that's going all the way over here. Is it equal to 0? If it is, then don't do anything. But if it's not, is it then going, is it greater than 0? So if it is greater than 0, that means that we're moving positively, and that should make our local scale 1, 1, and 1. This is going to flip the sprite on the x-axis. It's going to go to the right with a 1, 1, and 1 scale because our sprite is facing the right. If it's false, which means it's not greater than 0, we're on the negative on the x-axis, then it's going to set that scale to -1. Wow, I know that's really convoluted and complicated, but if you have any problems getting this set up, just hit me up on Discord and I'll try to give you a hand. What we're going to do now is we're going to go throw that into our player controller. Just go down here to sequence and hit 3, and we're going to drag in our movement animation right here. And we actually have one more thing to do. If you'll notice, we should be having a movement from right to left. If you actually watch this sprite character right here, he should flip depending. Remember I told you that collider goes to the left. Same thing, but whenever I'm pressing my shift, I'm getting faster, but it's not changing to the sprint function. One more thing I just want to check just to make sure this is all right from previous videos. We have block left and block right. Oops. Try that one more time. Go down to our variables and click off of that, and you should see that it's blocked right, and whenever I leave that, it's actually throwing that out of the collider. So it's saying, okay, now we're not blocked right. That was that convoluted mess, if you remember. Now it's blocked left, and now it's not blocked left. So why are we not sprinting? Well, we have to set up one more thing in an established sprint check variable. So believe it or not, I actually left out this next part on purpose. So just in case you weren't following along with this series, you just want to know how to get an animation to work, I will show you how to do that now. We actually have a super unit called sprint check, and at the very end of our sprint check, this is just checking whether or not the sprint button is being pushed. We set that up in our edit settings there, our project settings. At the end of each one of these, so if the sprint button is being pressed, well, then we are going to set the bool for the animator. We're going to name that sprinting, which I believe that's what we had set up in our animator parameter, sprinting right there. And then we're going to set that to true. This one right here is going to come right down there. Okay, so one of these two is always going to be firing, so I'm actually going to do one more thing. I'm going to do output here, and I'm going to add a control output, and I'm going to run both of these into that. And that is so that we can actually chain this to something else. If you look there, we can run one more thing. Since that's always firing, it's just helpful to do that. Now, we are going to have one problem because I messed up a little bit on our animation. And that was not on purpose, but I luckily caught that before I made this video. So if you look, we do have a sprint function, but while I hold the shift, even if I'm not moving, it's not going back to idle. And the reason why is because our animator is not set correctly. You can actually adjust this while you're in play mode, but you have to click this auto live link off. And what we're doing here is I have one parameter in here that's not necessary. It's sprinting to false. That means it's only going to transition if I'm not holding that sprint button. The same thing here. We don't need either one of those, and you should notice now that when we sprint, whoops, what did I do wrong? Let me check and just make sure that's firing correctly now. Okay, yeah, so we should actually have this working correctly now. So even though we're still holding the shift button down, we are moving and we are getting a walk to run, a run to walk, and we are not moving anymore when we hit the wall. That is actually what we want. Perfect. Okay, if you had any problems at all with this tutorial, be sure to hit me up on the Bolt Discord server. There is a link in the description below. The next video, we're going to establish our jump and double jump functions. So hopefully I'll see you there.